Welcome to Book Lounge by Libby. I'm Joe, and I'm so happy you're here. This week, we're celebrating Audiobook Month, and how better could I celebrate than by having some amazing voices from the industry join me today. To share their experiences, I have the incredibly talented Saskia Maarleveld and Michael Crouch. Welcome. Thank you both for being here today.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you. Glad to be here.
Oh, so excited to have you both here. Before we started recording, I said, this is going to be a tough one for me because I'm going to start listening to the two of you talk and just lose any hope of following my notes because I'm just going to be like, right, what book am I listening to? It's the problem of being a big audiobook head. Now, I usually have our guests start by giving an intro so anyone who's not watching the video, who's doing audio only, can get familiar with their voices. But I don't think we need to do that in this case. I think your voices are pretty under are people are aware of your voices. Whatever, they'll figure out what I'm trying to say. But why not? If you want to say hi, your name, and something you're working on or want to share or promote, I think that'd be a great place to start. Michael, do you want to go first?
Sure. I'm Michael Crouch. I'm a voice actor and I work mostly in audiobooks. Something I'm working on now. Oh, one thing I just did that was cool, recorded last week is I've been doing, there's these junior novelizations of the Stranger Things series.
Oh,
So it's like Stranger Things, like it's each book does one season, and it's like written Goosebump style, like for younger kids.
Oh, love.
And so I did season 4, book 4 last week, and that was a treat.
Wow. That sounds like a treat. And Saskia, how about you?
Hi, I'm Saskia Maarleveld, and what am I working on at the moment? The rest of this week, I will be working on a new Star Wars book by Madeline Rue, Star Wars Legacy. It's like Leia and Rey. So that is very exciting and nerve-wracking as well.
I'm sure with both of your examples there, like, what does it feel like to the two of you to work with IP like that? I mean, it's one thing to bring to life an author's work. What does it feel like when you're tiptoeing into things that maybe have a different presentation to them, or they might already have a voice that exists out there?
From my experience with the Stranger Things books, like for one, it was like I already was a fan of the show and I hadn't watched, like we started them last year and I watched season 1 when it came out and it was like I don't know, like 8 or 9 years between that and when I was working on the book. So I revisited it just on Netflix, and that was fun. And with that, it's like what I do is I use what they did on screen as a guide, as a base, but I don't try to do full-on impressions of the characters because A, I wouldn't succeed in doing that great. And 2, just we're accepting now that this audiobook is its own entity inspired by the series. So I take little nuggets and inspiration from what they did and go from there and make it its own thing.
I love that. It informs the performance. And for like the people who are the diehard fans of the show, they go, they're seeing that. I see where that came from. I hear that intonation, that inflection. But right, your goal is to keep it like it's original work, and you're trying to also keep it within the family, but also feeling fresh and not kind of rehashed.
Exactly.
I think with the Star Wars stuff, it feels slightly different from that because they want you to do it like it is. Where I've done other things that are more like what Michael's talking about, where it's like it exists, but like you don't have to like nail the impressions because it's like that those characters coming through you, which is what people want to see and hear. With the Star Wars stuff, it feels good because you get approved for it. So like you know that they have approved you. So like that's the first step of like, okay, we're good with that. And then it's really like pulling lots of clips from movies. And my director said on day one, we already did day one of this book, and he was like, "I'm gonna be on you. Like you're gonna hate me by the end of today. I'm gonna keep being like, let's play that Ray voice again. Let's play that Leia voice again."
Wow.
Just to keep going back to it. And I was actually surprised that like the Leia voice, I've done Leia before in other books when she's younger, and I think her older voice is actually easier for me. It's that like Carrie Fisher, like whiskey and
Yeah.
cigarettes voice. So it's a lot of fun, but you do have to like every character that comes along that already exists in the movies. You're listening to that sample and trying to get as close as possible. So that's a little different from other books where have license to like do as you wish.
There's just so much nuance to that. I mean, you both record so many things between voiceover and books and just all around. What does it feel like when you're in a moment like that is so constrained? And on the flip side, how relieving is it, or is it not, when you've got more of the kind of creative freedom?
Well, what that is reminding me of is when you have a book with a couple different narrators, and like sometimes I'm recording first and I have the freedom to make the choices for the characters, and that can be freeing, because if the other person has agreed to follow my lead, then okay, all the choices are up to me, and inspired by the text, obviously. um but then on the other hand, like, if I'm really busy and I am totally happy to follow someone else's lead, and, like, if they've already made choices, I just need to listen to a clip and, like, "Okay, I'll do it like that." I don't have to think too much about it. Um,
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
Michael and I actually have a series that we did together, and I feel like that
yeah.
was a similar kind of where whoever recorded first would set the voices, but also we had input from the author
mhm,
and input from, like, the previous books in the series, so it like and we'd do a check-in of like, "Hey, Michael, like, I'm gonna do this. Is that okay? Like, you're good with that?" So, it depends on the book, but I do think that having freedom to like just let the text speak to you and see how it comes out of you, um at least for me, is generally like the way that I work. I don't do like
mm,
a lot of pre-planning with
right.
like vocally figuring out how things are going to sound. I like to like see what happens, because sometimes you're surprised where you've read something but then you get into the booth and you do a character and you're like, oh, that's where we're going with this, and actually that I think that is the voice. So that's fun too.
Absolutely. It is so strange to think of, like, is it just because it's Star Wars that you have a director on you like that versus the situation you're both describing, being able to just kind of uh, play back and forth with each other and say, "Hey, I want to take it this way," or "I recorded my lines. Let's see what they come back with." How often is there kind of like that director producer intervention in your general audiobook work?
Sort of depends on the publisher you're working with and
Mhm.
also the project. I'd say there's only one publisher that we work with that like regularly has directors.
Okay.
Otherwise, it kind of depends if there's like a higher profile book, or if you're an author. I think often they'll put you with a director just to help you through the process when you're not as familiar with it. But for us, unless we're working with a certain publisher, we're often on our own.
Right.
And
Yeah.
both has its advantages and disadvantages.
Totally.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much like that. It can vary, and it just depends on the projects. I mean, there's some where, uh, I'm happy to sort of be self-directing and be the one just in charge on that level. I mean, hopefully, I'll at least be working with an engineer who can help me out in the moment, but sometimes it's not like that. Sometimes you're totally on your own.
Oh, wow.
And then there are other times when I'm so grateful that there is a director on the job that can help guide me through it, especially when I have when I'm doing books back to back and I've got to prepare last minute, to know that there's someone in the studio who has my back, who knows the material, that can be a godsend.
Mhm.
Oh, I can't even imagine. Are you ever working on more than one book at a time?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
All the time.
Yeah.
Last week, I think I worked on last week, I worked on 3 different books in the 5 days, but, like, I
Oh,
haven't finished I think I finished one of them, the others I am, like, back to. It's not always like that, but there's some weeks where you're like, I'm starting something, I'm finishing something, I'm getting a day in on something else. So, yeah, the directors are great when
wow.
they can pick up our pieces
Oh,
on
yeah.
those or just remind us. Also with the engineers, they'll often keep voice samples for us and things like that if you need to come
Mm.
back to I started something today and I'm not going back to it until like June 1st, I think. So
Oh, wow.
sometimes it's,
To just
you
have
know,
that queued up so they can be like, "And this is how you were delivering it 2
Yeah.
months ago."
yeah.
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 Wow. Oh, that blows my mind. To take a big step back, what is the first audiobook you remember hearing or loving? And did it perhaps inspire you into the career?
The first ones that I listened to were on CD on long road trips. I went to Ithaca College in upstate New York, and I'm from Austin, Texas. And starting my sophomore year, I would drive from Austin to Ithaca, and that's when I started listening to audiobooks in the car. So
Mhm.
my first, I listened to one of Ellen's books on audio, like some funny ones, like the Jon Stewart Daily Show book,
Yeah.
the America Guide to Democracy in Action, and some David Sedaris books I listened to. I love the first one of those during one of those trips. So the first time I really I listened to a book fiction and was like really captivated by the art form of the performance was I listened to Jeremy Irons read Lolita, and I was
Oh,
like,
wow.
"Oh, he's so good." Like,
Mhm.
and this is before I ever considered doing audiobooks, but I was like, "This is a great performance. Like, there's something beautiful about it and fascinating." And it's something I revisited after I started to get into audiobooks. I was like, it inspired me to do good work.
Mhm.
Yeah, my family is large. I'm one of 5 kids, and, so we had, like, a literal box of, like, a shoebox of cassette tapes in the front of the car, and it was a fight of, like, what was gonna be listened to. Um, so we did and it was on, like, the, long drives, and I've spoken about this before, but we used to listen to the Greek myths narrated by Andrew Sachs,
Oh, wow.
and it was like I still many years later, I can't find it anywhere. It seems to be lost to unless you wanna pay, like, $700 on some corner of eBay, but I still remember, like, how he said certain lines. It was
Mhm.
such a good performance, like Michael said, and such a captivating performance with the voices he did and um, how he navigated those stories, and yeah, so we listened to so many books like that when I was growing up, and I think that was just always I never thought about that being a job. Like, I don't think I don't remember the moment. I think actually when I got my first audiobook and I was like, "Wait, this like, people are paid to do this? This is a
Yeah.
job." Um, but it definitely, like, was a big part of my childhood listening to books and reading. My parents read to us a lot in general.
I love that it seems so formative for both of you. Like, I think my audiobook start was also by long road trips, going to the library, picking what we were going to, listen to the whole way. And there's something that feels so foundational about a car trip being like, how are we going to entertain everyone? And, we don't have countless TVs, DVDs, whatever the, technology was at the time wasn't quite there in the late 90s. What brought you to this point? If you went from having this love of reading and appreciating audio narration to the point where you realized this is a job and I want to do it.
I had been Well, my background's in theater, and I kind of abandoned that route, but I still wanted to act. I started getting into voiceover, different areas of voiceover. And then I got curious about audiobooks, and I took a class taught by this producer, Paul Rubin, and I thought I found it fascinating, everything that I learned in that class. And I don't know, I just kind of, it's opportunity is what led me to actually doing it.
Mhm.
I mean, an interest in the work.
Right.
And then my start was one of those rare situations where the timing just worked out perfectly. And it so rarely happens this way, for me at least. But like, this was a 6-week course. It was like the last time he ever did that.
Oh, wow.
And like between weeks 3 and 4, it like met on a Tuesday at the studio in Midtown John Marshall Media. And in between weeks 3 and 4 or something, I got an audition from my agents for an audiobook for Random House. I was like, okay, I will apply what I've been learning in this class to this audition. And I did. And then right after the class ended, I found out I got it. It's like, it was good timing.
Yeah, it just lined up perfectly.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, it was similar in terms I studied theater and got out of college and was suddenly in the real world of like, this is how it really is.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know if I want to do live this life. So I was kind of debating what I was going to do. And I'm originally from New Zealand, so
Mhm.
I have used to have a Kiwi accent. And again, doesn't happen like this anymore. But Recorded Books posted an audition on Actors Access or Backstage, one of those, like, which they don't do. But I think they were desperate for a young female Kiwi voice for this debut novel. And I happened to see it. I auditioned for it. I got it and was like, this is a thing. Like, and then I did that. And then they had another Australian or New Zealand book come along 6 months later. And so over the next probably 2 years, I just like chipped away being like, I think I want to do this, and just really hustled to the point where I was able to only do this. And I've been like
Right.
really lucky that ever since it's been that way. I think it was a good time. I mean, I think Michael, it was like a similar time that we sort of got into it. We got into it at a good time as well before it
Mhm.
like blew up into this thing that everyone wants to try.
Yeah.
So we got, I think,
It's like as the floodgates were opening, but before everyone realized
yeah.
they could go and yeah.
And
Yeah.
they didn't expect everyone to like have a home studio. At least when I started it, like everyone didn't have to have a home studio. I feel like I was
Yeah.
able to be guided in the process in a way that
Mhm.
now it's a little more like thrown straight into the fire of like, well, can you do this?
Right.
I mean, I probably sucked at the beginning. So, I
Yeah.
think I learned on the job,
Yeah.
which I think I got that chance because
Because
of
there
the
Yeah.
was the
timing
guidance. Yeah.
and because of like where audiobooks were at that point. It was a little before the like boom of the kind of
Every book wasn't getting
2010s.
an
Yeah.
audiobook then.
They
Yeah.
were just starting. They were
Right.
like just starting. And so it was like that mix of like they were starting to want to put everything on audiobook, but there was still a really small pool of
The work was
narrators and
right.
work
The work was
people.
to
Yeah.
come, but yeah.
So, yeah, I'm so grateful that that happened for us.
Yeah. Me too.
Yeah.
And like Saskia was saying about having to hustle, like it wasn't like I got that first book and suddenly I was getting book after book after book after book. It took a long time networking and you just getting to know publishers, making sure they knew who I was.
Yeah.
Patience and tenacity got me to a point where I started working consistently. It took like 2 years before it got consistent for me.
Hmm.
And do you both remember what your first book was and how many you're at now? Because you both have wild numbers of audiobooks recorded.
My first one was a Louis L'Amour Western.
fun.
And similar to Saskia in that they were looking for something specific. This was a first-person narrative, and the protagonist was a 17-year-old. I don't remember exactly where he was from, but he did need a Southern accent.
Mhm.
And I'm from Texas, so I can pull out the Southern pretty easily. And also, I had a specialty in doing younger sounding voices. So it turned out I was well suited for that initial job, and that's what got me in.
Yeah, I think having those hooks was like still, I tell people, I'm like, if there's anything that makes you, like, obviously everyone's special, but if there's anything that makes you really unique, obviously that is going to be a way in, even if you're good at doing everything. If you can, like, I
Find a
got in with the
lane.
New Zealand thing, it's that's how, for me, that's what, like, it was a while. I was like, I remember being like, oh man, they cast me in this book and there's no accents. This is so exciting. Because I feel like for a while it was like for a couple of years, it was
Mhm.
like most of the things I got were because I could do accent work.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I was like, I'm doing a book. It's all American. This is so exciting. Even though I sound like this now. I'm like completely blanking on the name of the book that I did, but it was by a young New Zealand author. It was her first book, and I did her second book as well. And it was like a YA sort of fantasy set in New Zealand. And yeah,
Now, do you know?
I think I have like 700 or something.
Oh,
Um,
Wow.
yeah.
yeah,
And
that was the
Michael,
second
where are
part of
you
your
at?
question. I
Yeah, no,
forgot.
that's okay. I was gonna loop you both back in
Yeah.
anyway.
Um, uh, I keep like a little under 550.
Wow.
That's it. I mean, and that includes everything, even the stuff I have just a small part on.
Right, but still.
But that's the grand total.
And the time is the time. Like, you recorded it, your name is attached to the project. Like, but
Yeah.
oh, wow. How do you two balance it all? Like, that's got to be exhausting to get your mind ready for potentially 5 books in a week.
I mean, you know what? Like, someone was asking me the other day, like, they were like, how do you, with another narrator who also does a lot of theater and film. And he was like, how do you like do this because he was like, how often do you do books? I was like, I do this every day. Like, I do it 5 days a week. It's my job. He was like, how do you do that? Like, aren't you, isn't it so tiring? I was like, yes, but also this is what I do. So for me, it's like, I look at other jobs. I'm like, how do you do that 5 days a week? Like, that seems
Yeah,
exhausting.
yeah.
But I mean, I told him my brain tends to go before my instrument.
Yes.
I mean, like, I feel like I have a just have a kind of, I do this every day. So like, feel like the instrument, unless I'm like really sick or something,
Right.
it's the brain is what for me like starts to shut down earlier of like, oh, I just read that sentence in the complete wrong way. So I do
That
think
I
it's
can
like,
relate to.
I do think there's like anything when you're
Yeah.
doing something every day, it just becomes,
It's the
what you
job.
do.
Right.
Yeah.
It's your
For
9
me,
to
at least,
5. Yeah, for you.
sort of feels like, and I'm lucky that I really love it.
Yes.
So, yeah.
I totally am aligned with you. And like the first thing that gets tired is my brain. But the older I get, I used to have like lungs of steel and had this like stamina. My voice never got tired. The older I get, sometimes my voice does get tired first before my brain.
Yeah.
Oh, I feel like I hit a certain point of the day and like once my brain's gone, it's like you gotta find me something basic to be doing because the thinking part of our day is over. And if
It's
you expect me to
over.
speak at the same time, not happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, with so many projects under both of your belts, what genre scares you the most and what genre feels like coming home to you? I know. So it's a weird one, but you both
Scares
do
me.
a beautiful mix of like everything. that's from like, are there ones you're excited when that crosses the desk, or you're ready for anything?
I get most excited when literary fiction comes my way. That's what I get most excited about. Probably most at home, because I've done so much of it. It's how I started. Is when I get a YA title. It's like I know I can just slip into it
Mhm.
in most cases, without having to find it and search for it. It's just
Yeah.
kind of there. Um, that scares me the most. I don't know. It's hard. I mean, maybe because I do so little of it is
Mhm.
nonfiction. I do like 98% fiction.
Sure.
And I don't know, I wouldn't say maybe that I'm scared of nonfiction. It's just that I have less experience with it. So
It would feel like a different approach, maybe.
yeah, if it's narrative nonfiction, then it's very
Mhm.
similar to fiction. But if, it were like some informative book about, leaves,
Yes.
I would maybe it just, I'd have to, it wouldn't be like the way where I could just, I'm here. It would be like, I got to find it. And I'm sure I could find it, but it would take some time to
Right.
find it.
It's not quite finding a character, it's finding how do I make this delivery enjoyable to listen to rather than entertaining. It's more the like, how do I make you want to keep hearing more about leaves?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Anyone would be lucky to hear Michael talking about leaves.
I agree.
I think scares me is probably again, I don't know if it's like scared, but I feel like memoirs that if like I've had to do a few where like the person is deceased and so they can't do it or but like a very few. And I feel like it's more about just the idea of the pressure of like telling someone's life and making
Yeah.
sure that that is done with like the care and um input that it needs.
Right.
Um and luckily most people do their own memoirs, so it doesn't happen too often. And then I, you know, I think that sort of like Michael said with like literary fiction, for us, that's like, what we want. Well, beautifully written, like, but I think there's like that also it can cover such a wide variety of genres within that in a
Right.
weird way. So I'd say like what makes me most comfortable is probably historical fiction. I've done so much of that. So like it just
Mhm.
feels like exciting going back to anything there. And these days I like really love a good romantasy.
Oh, okay.
Um and I think like
And they'll keep you busy.
I
There's
don't
plenty
do
of
that
them.
many and yeah, I don't do that many of them, but like
Yeah.
when you get a really well written
Mhm.
romantasy, because I love fantasy, but there's something like when you get like a really and there I don't know, I really enjoy I've been recently I came to where I was like, I think I really like doing these. Yeah. I think it was after after doing Alchemized because that was such a like
Yes.
well just an amazing feat of literature. And so I did that and I was
Mhm.
like, I enjoyed that so much. And it wasn't just because it was well written. I also really enjoyed the genre. And so I
Right.
think that kind of like brought me back around. Um,
It's gotta be a
yeah.
fun way to get to dip your toes into so many different genres that can influence what you both personally want to read later. So I asked the audience on the Libby App Instagram page what they've always wanted to know about audiobook narrators. So many of them had incredible questions about what happens in the booth. So in this segment, let's just start off with: do a lot of narrators start in other professions like you both did, voice acting, vocal coaches, things like that, or is that not kind of the way anymore? Are people going right into voice acting?
I feel like everyone sort of comes from somewhere else. I don't I mean, maybe now more that it's a bigger thing, but like, I don't know how many people like come right out of the gate being like, I want to do audiobooks.
Put me in, coach.
I mean, now that's how I feel, but I think, I don't know, I think a lot of people come from like, oh, whether it's, oh, I was doing theater or I was
Mhm.
doing other types of voice
Like
acting,
commercial
or like I
acting.
worked at a hedge fund and got sick of it and like, this sounds fun. I
Got
don't
it.
know.
So
I don't
truly
know.
coming from right. No,
I
basically
think
saying
like
like no one's
now,
walking out of university and saying, all right, off to the booths.
I mean, I would love to think so, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if
What do
I've
you
ever
think?
met anyone like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, the people who are coming from different types of acting, I mean, that's usually ideal. It's not required, but it's like audiobooks, it's a type of acting. Voice acting is
Mhm.
it's a type of acting. So if you have, good acting skills as your base, I think that's really important.
Right. You're kind of starting with, you also understand the like state of play. You can take direction back. You can
Mm.
improvise, or at least kind of read the scene. At least that's what it feels
Mhm.
like to me.
Yeah.
They'd also like to know, is it hard to find work if you have an unusual voice? Or do you go about training things out of your voice, embracing the oddness?
Embracing the oddness is good. It makes you stand out. Um, but I do understand the concern about being so unique that you have fewer opportunities.
Right.
It can be a balancing act. But I think, harnessing what makes you unique is key because there's a lot of competition. There's a lot of people out there. So you want to
Mhm.
stand out. But like, for instance, for me, like doing like, I'm 42 now, but like I've always had a youthful sound. Like when I'm in the booth, like people would not think like, oh, he's in his 40s. They would think, who is this, uh, I mean, I often get cast as 20 somethings and like teenagers still. And I do older stuff too. It took time to get out of that. But it's like on one hand, it's like this is good. It's giving me
Mhm.
opportunities to do these particular things. On the other hand, I need it, this took time. I need to remind producers that, you know, I can do other things.
Think of me for other books as
And
well.
yeah, and that eventually happened. It just took a
Mhm.
little time. Um, so yeah, that was a situation where it's like, okay, I should embrace what makes me unique, but I
Mhm.
also don't want to be completely pigeonholed. So you
Absolutely.
Mhm.
just find ways to expand bit by bit.
Right.
Yeah, I'd agree. Definitely agree with that. Also, I think that one of the worst things that someone can do is to try to sound like someone else. And like, and I think it's really hard. It's really tempting to want to do that when you're starting out and when you're listening to tons, getting told, listen to so and so and listen to so and like, I think it's very hard to just like be comfortable with the fact that your voice is unique. And when you're trying to sound like someone else, your half part of your brain is doing that and not telling the story. So
Right.
I think like when it's the same thing when I have a bunch of samples from like a co-narrator, if I get two in my head of like trying to sound exactly like them for the characters, my version of the character actually just sounds worse because it doesn't sound as like true because
Yeah.
I'm in my head worrying about how I'm sounding. And when you're narrating, like, you can do all the work everyone should be doing, when they're starting out coaching and reading things for themselves and working on stuff. But when you're in the booth narrating, you hope to get to a place where you're not thinking about how you're sounding, even though that seems weird, but your brain is more on like the story that you're telling
Right.
because you can hear that
It's time
Hmm.
for the
Hmm.
skills you've developed to take
to
over.
take
Like
over and that your
you did the
voice.
pre-work.
Yeah, and your voice, when you're getting cast and things,
Mhm.
um, they are casting you because they want your
You.
voice.
Yeah.
Even though it's tempting to be like, oh, okay, I think I really like so-and-so's voice, so I'm going to try to sound a little bit more like them. But then they can cast them. Just do, I think like really
Right.
Yeah.
focusing on on your sound. And like Michael said, also you can get out of that, but like you got to get in. And so getting in,
Right.
focusing on like what makes you special, like I said before, is I think important.
Yeah, it feels like the big part of art of like not being too precious with it as a whole, but also still taking yourself both seriously and not too seriously, kind of apply where needed.
Yeah.
They also had questions about booking books, how things actually get into your hands. Do you choose the books you narrate? Is there an interview process or an audition? What does that look like?
It varies. Um, there are times when I have to audition. Like there are certain publishers that like almost always make you audition for the book. They'll have you read a sample and they'll send it to the author, and the
Wouldn't
author
you
will
say that's
choose
more
which one they want.
common now than it used to be as well?
I think so. I
Yeah.
Mm.
think so.
Oh, wow.
But there are also times, and this happens frequently, where I don't have to audition and the producer will send samples of previous work I've done to the author. I know they're probably sending a few options to the author. And the
Right.
author will listen to those samples and say, oh, I think Michael would be the choice for this. And then the producer will say, hey, are you available?
Okay. That makes sense. And it's also the like the the reminder to everyone of like, this is why you should always be kind, because there are people you will work with that you want to speak well of you.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
Totally.
skills or not,
Yeah.
you still want them to go like, yeah, Michael and Saskia would be perfect for this. You don't want there to be a but at the end of that sentence. Just here's some samples.
Yeah. I think in audiobooks there's a lot of that. Like I
Oh,
would say
sure.
a large number of producers we work with used to be like engineers with us.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
sure.
if you're rude to your engineer, that to me that's like the greatest sin. Your engineer is your person who is like, you need to treat them well. Not even just because you never know where they're going to be, but also you never know where they're going to be.
Right. You never know where they're going to be, but also like
Yeah.
they're trying to make you sound your
Yes,
best.
exactly.
Like,
They're like, they're there for you. And yeah, it's like people like to work with other people who are decent and good to work with.
I think we talked about this one at the beginning a little bit. You collaborate with the author, but it depends on like the level depends on the publisher, the book, the author's general involvement. Is that fair to say?
The
Yeah.
publishers, I think,
Okay.
are pretty, it depends, I think. But I think
Oh, and
author
also
care
like if they're
is,
just like if the author is established, kind of sometimes like some books
yeah.
might be.
Well, I think they want to avoid, they always want to avoid anything becoming too involved unless like
Mhm.
everyone's in for it, I think.
That makes
Um,
sense.
and it's a intimate process, like for the author. It's just their baby, but also they are handing it off to professionals. So I think that there's always like a initial step of like going through the publishers, and then I think everyone's happy when it works well and everyone's able to. It's always better when you can get your questions answered and communicate with the author. And it's really nice when you get to, meet the authors or
Yeah.
work with them again. You build these relationships. But I would say there's definitely like managing of it a, a lot.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I don't know. What do you think, Michael?
When working with publishers, we rarely have a direct line to the author. The executive producer at the publishing office acts as a go-between. Usually, if we have questions, we'll ask the producer, and the producer will relay them to the author, the author's team. And that can vary, but
Right.
that's often the case. Where if on a book like that, if I do ever have some sort of semi-direct connection to the author, it might be if we've connected on social media.
Yeah. That
Um,
makes sense.
but there are other cases where I do smaller projects where authors are self-publishing or working with very small publishers where I am
Right.
working directly with the author.
Got
Um,
it.
so it can really vary.
That makes sense, and I think that's kind of part of the mystery and mystique of audiobooks is just like, "Oh, are they are you all sitting in a room together?" And like that kind of thing, so it's helpful to hear that, I'm sure for a lot of people. Is there a standard for what you're paid for your work? Do you make more if a book sells well, who the author is, or is your rate standardized and increases after time in the industry?
So I would say that um, narrators do not get royalties or residuals for books. Um,
With recorded books, though, and
Except
you
for
get
with
some
recorded
of the
books, yeah.
Mm.
That's the only publisher that has that in the contract. It's something that we would all love, and maybe it'll happen in the future. We would love to work on that. I'd say most narrators negotiate. I'd say the larger number of narrators are negotiating for themselves. So some people have their agents doing audiobook work, but not everyone. Um, and so uh, generally, you just can decide, you kind of know what your rates are with certain publishers. You can ask for more for certain books, but it all sort of depends on how things are able to be negotiated. And
Interesting. So right, just kind of like you're putting the negotiation out there, and things kind of go by from job to job is kind of like the easy answer.
yeah, and I would say a lot of publishers will have you at they'll know what your rate is.
Right.
Personally, I like to be fairly open of like, uh, I like to talk about it with the producer and figure it out based on a project to project basis, because not every budget is the same, not every book is the same, and it shouldn't be. Like they're not. So I think it's great to have like a rate, but
Yeah.
Yeah,
it
you
it
try to
also,
adhere to your baseline, and just sometimes
yes.
hard things will depend. There are many variables.
Right.
So some
Yeah.
Oh,
books I
well,
get
thank
paid
you.
more for, some less. There are a lot
Yeah.
No,
of
that makes
variables.
sense. And it's a tough question, y'all. Like we're putting them on the spot.
Yeah, yeah.
Looking at process, so we've kind of gone from booking books to this world. How long does it take you to prep for one book to really sink in and grasp the characters?
It's hard to say. I mean, I do so many, so I have my own process, and I've streamlined it over the years because I do it all the time.
Yeah.
Um, I do if it's me on the whole book, I will absolutely read the whole thing
Uh-huh.
um, before the first session. There are rare instances where I've been so slammed that like I've started recording before I've finished the book, but
Mhm.
that's usually not the case.
Yeah.
Um, but the thing, if I read it, at, sometimes I just gotta plow through them, knowing that I'm not fully absorbing everything yet. So I'll make little marks where I'll just be like a bookmark in my I annotate app. Will be like, revisit this before the session,
Got it.
fill in the gaps because it's not there right now. It'll take.
Mm.
So I do what I call my phase two, where I'll take like my page goal for the day of the session. Say I want to get to the first 100 pages. And I'll skim back through them and take note of those bookmarks, make some notes in the margins that will help ground me in the scene, get to know the characters better so that I can walk into the studio feeling grounded. And then the exciting part, though, the best part about audiobooks is that it's the moment to moment work, like staying really present because
Yeah.
I do a fair amount of prep, but it's like I learned in scene study in college. You do your analysis so you can throw it away. Um,
Sure.
you you do you get grounded in it, you trust that you're grounded in it, then you just stay in the moment and work from your gut because there's so much material that you could never rehearse at all. You just couldn't.
Right.
So you have no other choice. And it's intimidating at first, then it's freeing because you know it's your only option, really.
You're like, I know this. I know I've done the work. Something good is going to come out of me. We'll see what it is in the
Yeah.
session tomorrow.
Yeah. And if you
Yeah.
mess up, I make mistakes all the time. That's the beauty of editing. and
Yes.
doing multiple takes. I also burp all the time. Like there's, it's just, it's just amazing what people don't hear when they
Yeah.
listen to the file.
Yeah, with the volume that we do, it's just not realistic to like prep the way that I did for my first couple books. And also, I am of the mind that I don't know that it's necessary to prep in that and to really, like Michael said, like live and understand every element of the book. I think it takes away some of the like spontaneity that comes in like being able to make your acting choices and when you're in the middle of it.
Right.
And I think that like a skill that we develop as we've been doing this for, 15 years or whatever, is that you streamline your process of prep. And also I mean, I speak for Michael, but like I'm a good cold reader, and that doesn't mean I've never seen it before. But like I know the story, but like I haven't like every sentence is still like, even if I've read it once before, that doesn't mean it's not fairly new.
Right. It's still
So it's like
fresh.
you can go in having like done a first pass prep read, and we still learn how to like read things in a way that is fairly new, but like we're able to keep our brains and our mouths are able to like keep up with each other and perform in the moment.
And you never know when understanding and inspiration will hit, because you can do all the prep work in the world. It may be when you're finally hearing yourself in the headphones that you're like, oh, this is how I want to say it as the words are coming out of your mouth.
Totally.
Yeah. And I've found that sometimes it can take a minute to go from reading it and understanding it here to like finding it, to doing it, finding it in my body.
Yes.
There's sometimes that happens seamlessly, and other times it's like, oh, it's like I have a good grasp on the book, but I haven't found it here yet. And I have to just kind of play with it until I find that like where I can land in it physically, vocally, spiritually, whatever.
Yeah. I think that's the thing that's so fascinating about audiobooks is in all of the conversations and thoughts I've had on audiobooks over the year, I can never quite figure out how to share that. Yes, a lot of our narrators are actors, but when the like library patrons are borrowing that audiobook, y'all are as readers are seeing it from the final piece. So it's kind of the like, we're thinking of the movies, we're thinking of live, and it lives somewhere in between that. Like, yes, there's editing happening and there may be more than one take happening, but kind of the magic isn't learning your lines and then delivering the performance. It is living and letting the kind of like creature adapt around you.
And like, wow, that just came out. Or like, I also have definitely had books that I've read on the page for my prep read and been like, oh, this is going to be a slog, or like, I don't know, I don't really get this or whatever. And then I get in the booth and I'm doing it and I'm like, this is so different off the page. And that's always really fun. Like where me and the director will be like on a break and we're like, both of us came in kind of like, all right, let's do this. And then we're like on lunch and we're like, this is awesome. This is so not what we thought it was going to be, even though we both knew the story, but it didn't.
It
like
didn't
in our
click before.
work prep read, we weren't experiencing it the way that now we're like experiencing it in the booth.
And excited to be.
Yeah. So, and that's always really cool. It's better than the opposite when you're like super excited about something and then you go in and you're like, what? This is not what I thought it was going to be.
Pronunciations. There are so many questions that came up about pronunciations. How do you research? Do you have to? Are you required to? Do you sometimes get a cheat sheet? How much do you just kind of like make up as you go? If it's names, like Saskia, as you mentioned, romantasy, every time I have to read a description of a romantasy on the pod, I'm like, sorry, y'all, it's in it's in the universe's hands with these names. But what does it look like to you in terms of like the process of any words, any things?
It depends. Like often like if I know that there's not going to be a director on the project who's going to have my back with some of that research, what I'll do is when I read through the book the first time, I'll make a note of any pronunciations that are not familiar or that could be pronounced a different way, because you never
Oh,
know.
sure.
Sometimes I assume it's pronounced, Maria, and it's actually Mariah, that
Yeah.
sort of thing. So it's always good I don't never just wing it, because you're going to end up having to correct it later in pickups if you get it wrong. So might as well get it right on the first go.
Right.
So yeah, I'll compile that list and send it to, if I'm working directly with the author, I'll send it to the author. If I'm working with a publisher, I'll send it to the producer, who will then send it to the author or their team. And they'll give us the information we need before the first session, ideally.
Yeah.
There's often still, there have been times where, yeah, you get the list and you do the book, and then it's like, oh, actually, this is actually something else.
No.
Like, no, I did
And
that
that is
already.
and you're like, are you sure? Like, could we just maybe, especially when it's fantasy, and you're like, could we, we like, and especially if you're not working directly with the author, and you're like, could you tell them we already did it and see how important that made up pronunciation is? Because maybe we can leave it. Just ask.
Yeah. What if you just like checked them and said, hey,
Just
do
check,
you like this?
because I think especially with fantasy, like
Oh,
a
that's
lot of the time,
true.
I'd say actually surprising amount of the time, authors, you hear them in their voice notes where they're asked to read the pronunciation, and a lot of them are like, I don't know, like, I guess this,
Yeah.
because
You didn't
a
have
lot
an
of them
idea?
haven't said it out loud.
Yeah.
Some of them are very clear. The project that Michael and I worked on, our author who actually came into the sessions and helped us with this, he was very clear. He had a whole basis for how everything was pronounced and the different languages, and which is amazing to have that. But there are a lot of authors, especially in fantasy, who have written these things, and they haven't actually said the words out loud. So they then are asked to give a file with pronunciations, and they're like, okay, I guess I got to do it. And they're like, I guess it's this, I guess it's that. But I think a lot of the time, if they were asked like, hey, so the narrator thinks this sounds best, what do you think? They might actually be like, great, fine.
Right.
Yeah.
So you never know.
And there are times when people with authors or whoever's helping with pronunciation, with the best of intentions, will make things more confusing. They'll record themselves reading through a list, but then they'll also send you a phonetic transcription, and the phonetic transcription doesn't match what they said on the audio. So you're like, well, then which one do I do?
Which one do
What
I
do you
do?
want from
Yeah.
me? Anytime anyone's ever asked me for phonetic anything, I'm just like, I couldn't possibly. I'm gonna make it worse. I promise.
Yeah.
Just give it a shot.
Yeah.
I could talk to you all day, but to wind us down and wrap us up, would you mind some rapid fire questions?
Sure.
Favorite word to say out loud?
In my warm-up, I do a lot of M words to like get my sound forward. And lately, I like be spitting out a lot of random one-syllable M words. But I'm like, I've been forgetting the word mouse lately. That's a cute word. And so I've been at mouse. And that is my favorite word at the moment.
I love that.
I can tell you my least favorite word.
Please, that's the next question.
Particularly.
Ooh.
Particularly. Because I always
That has,
just
like, a
blow
lot of
through it.
Yeah.
And then I have to go and slow it down, and then it sounds like weird. Particularly.
sounds
I
like
just
you're
would say
breaking it apart.
particularly.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's one of my least favorites.
I get tripped up on words that start with in, like infinitesimal, and like when sometimes there's like in infinity. Like sometimes you'll get clusters like that, and I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
They just want to be cruel.
Instant, like in an instant.
Yeah, or clasp is a hard one. A lot of people are talking about that word. When it's in the context of a sentence, I don't know what it is about it, but it can be hard to get it out properly.
Yeah. They're all like sneakily insidious words. They all have like sharp edges on them that want to catch. Romance scene or battle scene?
Battle scene. Romantic battle scene.
Okay.
I'd say battle scene. I like a good action scene.
One accent you'll never attempt again.
I find Midwest accents really hard.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are times when you're asked to do an accent or you're required to do an accent for a book that you've never studied and you just have to do a crash course and wing it. And I don't know, I could have nailed this one or I could have totally bombed. I don't know, but I had to do a Greek one once.
Oh,
It was like paired
whoa.
with all this dialogue. And I was like, I'll do my best.
Here we go.
So if I bombed, I'll never do it again. But if I did well, then it's fine.
Add it to the list. Yeah. Book you wish you could narrate, like a book that's already out in the world.
The Catcher in the Rye.
Fun.
That's a good one. Book I wish I could narrate. Oh boy. The Golden Compass.
Ooh, good answer too. But two incredible answers. What is your nightmare sound that you're always fighting against? Michael, it might be your burps.
That's a big one. That gets in the booth. That's
yeah. While you're recording, what's that like? I mean, for me, my dog is snoring underneath us, which may pick up occasionally.
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes from within. It's my burps.
Mine is my stomach grumbles.
Yeah.
My stomach's very vocal, and doesn't even mean that I'm like hungry. Sometimes it's just, but I have to stop and like eat something, even if I'm not particularly hungry.
See, and there's that word again.
But the stomach, I record most of my sessions. I have a pillow on front of my stomach because it dulls. Just random like, it's very irritating.
Just enough. And let's see, character voice you're most proud of.
Oh, I did. Is that a dog snore that I
That
just
sure
heard?
is a dog snore.
Yeah, really cute. That was so cute.
Oh, he gets like lots of little nudges like Roscoe Buddy.
That's really cute.
I mean, the cool thing about audiobooks is that you get to do characters that you would never be cast as in any other scenario. And some people have commented that they appreciate like when I do like, I don't know, characters that I think of as based like on my grandmother, like older women. Just I don't know. I just enjoy them, and I've gotten comments that some people seem to like them. There's this one character like an older woman in The Great Believers that I did. Great book. And I was proud of how she turned out. I mean, because we're obviously very different. But like to kind of connect with and kind of land softly and comfortably in someone that is so different from I am. It's a cool feeling.
Oh, I love that.
I think that's part of what we love as narrators is being able to do like characters that we would never be cast as in a movie or, like we get to do like, I get to do like the old man villains and Michael gets to do the old lady villains,
Yeah.
Right.
So I think that's like part of the appeal. I think the voice that I did for Helena in Alchemized was I was proud of because when the audition came in, it was like British, the narration's British, but maybe Helena has like an Italian accent, but maybe not because it's not a real world.
Right.
And I knew that if I did an Italian accent, it would be jarring. So I feel like I kind of came to like everyone's like, what is that accent? Like, where is she from? And I'm like, this is a fantasy world. It's a mix, it's a muddle.
Like
and I felt like
that
where I came to with that and was able to sustain it for like 36 hours of a book I felt like it was an achievement that I found something that felt like very natural, but it was like, what is that?
Oh, yeah.
I couldn't like be like, remember French or remember Italian. It was just a very a muddle.
You had to keep it a lot. Like you had to keep it with you.
Yeah. So I felt that was fun.
Oh, well, Michael, Saskia, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And friends, you can find more info on all of our guests linked in the show notes. Please consider following or subscribing on your favorite platform so you never miss an episode. You won't want to miss this Thursday, where we'll be sharing some of our favorite recent audiobooks to add to your TBR. Thanks so much for joining us, and happy reading! You can sample and borrow the books from today's episode in the Libby app, or if you're a librarian, find them for purchase in Overdrive Marketplace. Book Lounge by Libby is a proud Evergreen Podcast signature program. Explore more amazing shows at evergreenpodcasts.com. This podcast is produced and recorded by me, Joe Skelly, with editing by Andrew Alonso. Our theme music is High Five by Rex Banner, used with permission. Book Lounge by Libby is presented by the Libby app. Learn more at libbylife.com/booklounge.